Black Wall Street was a thriving African-American community in Tulsa, Oklahoma during the early 1900s. Located in the Greenwood district, it was home to successful black-owned businesses, banks, and professionals, making it one of the most prosperous black communities in the U.S. However, on May 31st to June 1st, 1921, a violent white mob attacked, looting, burning, and destroying the neighborhood in what became known as the Tulsa Race Massacre. Hundreds were killed or displaced, and the once flourishing district was left in ruins. Despite the tragedy, Black Wall Street remains a symbol of resilience, economic strength, and the fight for racial justice.
In the last part of the series, we left off in the end-time prophecy of Israel. As this subject of understanding Israel has been spoken on, there has been a lot of challenge and opposition to the point of these videos. Many people have sought to place a label or a box to categorize this series and this ministry through. I understand much of the objection because it's very hard to look at the world differently than how you were trained to and what you were taught. It's hard dealing with the fact that people have been lying to us. It's hard dealing with the fact that the way you were looking at the world has been steered by your enemy. And so it's easier to ignore conflicting information rather than trying to understand it. And this series about Israel is a big one to cover because it exposes so many falsehoods that many people just have been born into and just know by default. And that's why we dealt with the end-time prophecy of Israel before we went into uncovering the identity of the Hebrews. You have to understand that Yah has given strong prophecy concerning his chosen nation. And so the last part of the series went into understanding this prophecy. Most people don't want to understand this topic because they look at the New Testament as the finality of prophecy. The way the Bible is taught is that Yahusha is the fulfillment of everything written in the Old Testament. And therefore, you don't need to study the Old Testament, you just need to know Yahusha, whom in English is referred to as Jesus. But this way of looking at the Bible is wrong, and that's not to diminish anything about Yahusha and his importance. He's extremely important. He is our Savior. He is our Redeemer. He is a major fulfillment of prophecy. But that is not all the prophecy that Yah has spoken of. And what the devil has done is hijack the conversation so that those who believe in Yahusha live in half-truth, that are more about serving themselves and their own salvation more than it is about serving Yah and being his servant. So sadly today, we have selfish Christians that says, just believe in Jesus and forget about everything else. Instead of saying, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done. Yahusha told us all to pray like this. This is how we're supposed to be. We are to be about Yah's kingdom. But because people only read parts of the Bible, they don't completely understand his will and what he has prophesied. And therefore people are still separate from him because they never made Yah the priority. They just used him to serve themselves. And so as we get into these topics that the end times is centered around, people that have not made Yah the priority want to say that topics like this don't really matter. They want to talk about race and skin color. People want to understand the Bible from a perspective that the hijackers have taught it from, and not from the influence of those who actually wrote the scriptures themselves. This topic matters greatly if you care about Yah's will. And so as we continue on in this series, we are still going to focus on the truth first, before we start breaking down the lies. Over the past couple of centuries, as our world developed and the system of education was created, we have been indoctrinated into a worldview that is not based on truth, but on a narrative leading us into a new world order. There is a level of indoctrination that the majority of us have been born into that does not allow us to fully understand this world that we live in. The devil has been lying to you and keeping you in the dark about history. So 1, you don't recognize how true the Bible actually is, and 2, you don't serve Yah and make your life about his will. So he created our education and told us how we are to look at certain groups of people. We are told one side of a story. We are even told that certain people don't even have history before they were taken and oppressed. we are told that certain prophecies have already been fulfilled that actually have not been fulfilled. We are highly deceived because there is an understanding that has been withheld from us. And as we live to serve Yah and bring about his kingdom, we will serve him in spirit and in truth, for this is what he desires. So as he prophesies that he will bring Israel and Judah back to their land and join them together as one again, having Yahusha reign as king over them, in order for you to see and enjoy the fulfillment of this prophecy, there are certain awakenings that need to happen. And this is what this series is all about promoting. So in order to do that, we need to go back over history and relearn what has been hidden from us, so that when you are applying prophecy and looking for these prophetic events to happen, you can understand it from the perspective of truth and not from Satan's web of lies. The end time prophecy of Israel has not been fulfilled yet, as we discussed in part 5. But we absolutely can see the awakening beginning to happen, and Yah starting to draw back his people as he promised. So in order for many of you who want to really truly serve Yah, but you just don't know what to believe because of the indoctrination that has been placed on us and our generations for centuries, we need to discuss who the children of Israel are. And this part of the series is going to go deep into history for you. Let's begin. Okay, so before we discuss this, we need to understand a very important point. Israel isn't just one set of people based by skin color. They are not in only one location. They are scattered, and Yahuwah is the one who scattered them. I will scatter you among the nations, disperse you throughout the countries, and remove your filthiness completely from you. You shall defile yourself in the sight of the nations, then you shall know that I am Yahuwah. That's Ezekiel chapter 22, verses 15 and 16. Moreover, the word of Yahuwah came to me, saying, Son of man, when the house of Israel dwelt in their own land, they defiled it by their own ways and deeds. To me their ways was like the uncleanness of a woman in her customary impurity. Therefore I poured out my fury on them for the blood that they had shed on the land, and for their idols with which they had defiled it. So I scattered them among the nations, and they were dispersed throughout the countries. I judged them according to their ways and their deeds. When they came to the nations, wherever they went, they profaned my holy name. When they said of them, These are the people of Yahuwah, and yet they have gone out of his land. This is Ezekiel chapter 36, verses 16 through 20. You see, he warned and told Israel of this from the beginning. When you beget children and grandchildren, and have grown old in the land, and act corruptly, and make a carved image in the form of anything, and do evil in the sight of Yahuwah your Elohim to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that you will soon utterly perish from the land which you cross over the Jordan to possess. You will not prolong your days in it, but will be utterly destroyed. And Yahuwah will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in number among the nations where Yahuwah will drive you. And there you will serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear nor eat nor smell. But from there you will seek Yahuwah your Elohim, and you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in distress and all these things come upon you in the latter days, when you turn to Yahuwah your Elohim and obey his voice, for Yahuwah your Elohim is a merciful El. He will not forsake you, nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers, which he swore to them. That's Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 25 through 31. I mean, he told them from the beginning, if they do not obey him, that he will scatter them, and they will be cursed. So if you're going to understand this topic, you need to have this basic understanding. Israel and Judah were scattered because of their wickedness and disobedience. Israel was first, and they never returned back to the land. But Judah came back briefly and awaited the Messiah promised to them. And so after he came, he was crucified, and Judah again was scattered. And so after the scattering, there was a lot that happened over history. And confusion over who Israel is has been a topic of debate in recent history, because history has been told from a perspective that placed the Roman Catholic Church and then the Church of England in the seat of power of who controls the narrative of history. There has been a hijacking of the leadership who claimed to be about Yah's kingdom. And this is where the confusion lies. And in order to uphold their lies, they engaged in many different tactics, including the persecution of the Jews. They also rewrote history through the whitewashing during the Renaissance period. There were social constructs built around skin color, and the truth was hidden from society, all while the world powers pushed the doctrine of Christianity that they were in control of. So now, like I said in the intro, we are relearning what was hidden from us. The first thing that needs to be addressed is the biggest elephant in the room, and I just got to get this out of here. Because no matter how you go around it and give the historic facts, people are not able to look past skin color. Even though I made a video very specific about race and skin color, explaining that we do not look at people based by skin color, but by their nationality that they descend from. Even though this was explained, people still ignorantly say that this teaching around the identity of Israel is wrong because Israel wasn't black people. People can't get past skin color. So as we go through the history, if we don't get past that thought, you might not be able to clearly see and understand who these people are through history. So we're going to cover that objection about the skin color of Israel and that Israel was not black-skinned people. The Bible doesn't deal with race, but there are a few occasions that the Bible does speak on skin color. You see, Yah is not concerned with the color of our skin, but how much of our heart is for him. But let's look at some scriptures. First one we will look at is with Moses. Yah wanted to show Moses a miracle, so he turned Moses' hands white. Then he turned it back to its original color. Exodus chapter 4 verses 6 and 7 says, "Furthermore, Yahuwah said to him, 'Now put your hand in your bosom.' And he put his hand in his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous, like snow. And he said, 'Put your hand in your bosom again.' So he put his hand in his bosom again, and drew it out of his bosom. And behold, it was restored like his other flesh." That's Exodus chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. So there was a difference in the color of his skin versus the white skin. I mean, this is what a form of leprosy is. It's turning the skin white. This is what leprosy looks like. Yeah. Let's continue. And then later on in that same chapter, verse 10 says, "And when the cloud departed from above the tabernacle, suddenly Miriam became leprous, as white as snow. Then Aaron turned toward Miriam, and there she was, a leper." Numbers chapter 12, verse 10. You see, same thing done to Moses, done to his wife. So when we say that Israel couldn't be black-skinned, this is denial based upon racism. But here's the thing. From those scriptures, what people may want to say is that, yes, that's true, but that doesn't prove that they are black-skinned. I have always said that they weren't white, but more olive-skinned. So to counter this claim, let's just go back to the original 12 sons of Jacob. If they were not black-skinned and they were olive-skinned, how did Joseph's brother, the other sons of Israel, mistake Joseph for an Egyptian? Again, there is no argument or debate about the skin color of the Egyptians. We know they were dark-skinned people. This is not debated, even though Hollywood still likes to portray them as white, like they did in The Gods of Egypt or that Christian B.A.M. movie. But anyway, if they were a different skin complexion than the Egyptians, Israel should have been easy to spot out amongst the Egyptians, especially amongst his own brothers. But that is not what scripture shows. Now Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke roughly to them. Then he said to them, "Where do you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Genesis chapter 42, verses 6 through 8. Then they went to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan, and told him all that happened to them, saying, "The man who was master of the land spoke roughly to us and took us for spies of the country." Genesis chapter 42, verses 29 and 30. They didn't know their own brother in the land of Egypt. They thought he was an Egyptian. If he had a completely different look than the Egyptians, and they only looked a certain way, Joseph would have been easier to spot. In the Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verses 5 and 6, Solomon clearly says, I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Sidar, as the curtains of Solomon. Look not upon me, because I am black, because I am tanned from the sun. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard have I not kept. That's Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. So to dismiss the fact that the Israelites were a people of a darker skin, those who we refer to as black people today, is denying evidence from the word. There is more evidence of this claim than any other claim. So let's just put that to bed right now. There is no reason for argument or debate about this. We don't need to argue about skin color, and this is not what you define anyone from. But if people still want to talk in the terms of the color of skin, this should now be made clear. So, as we are following the history of Judah, we can leave out the argument about skin color and try to identify them by their history and nationality. Now, in understanding this subject, we must do some research, because as I have said repeatedly, the true history is not told in the mainstream or in our schools. The world history that we have been taught is mainly about the world powers that were in dominance and had the most sway over history, as well as other events that had meaning. But there is evidence of this knowledge if you decide to research for yourself. For me, the beginning of my knowledge started from reading Rudolph Windsor's book, From Babylon to Timbuktu. But you see, the beauty of good research is not about basing your understanding on just one source, but going through many sources. So, as we read books, what we should always do is when they cite a source, like when you see the little number next to a statement, we go to the back of the book in the bibliography, and then we go to that source that they cite. And then what we do, we actually get that book that they cited the source from and read that book for ourselves. And from doing that, you will find many different sources. And then when you read those books, they will give you different sources. And you get those books too. And after a while, you will find that you have a small library that you can draw upon and do your research from. There is a plethora of history we can gather understanding from. We just need to do our due diligence. You see, history is not lost. It's just hidden in books. Anyways, the information that I will be presenting in this and any other video is based upon this technique of research, gathering books from other research and reading them. What I will be presenting is not general statements not built on by research, but actually quite the opposite. And I am working on compiling my own list of books for you all that would like to read on your own. Here are some of the books I'm using information from in these next parts of the video. Like I said, I already mentioned Rudolph Windsor's book, which is a great introduction. But if you want to go deeper, there is The History of the Jews by Solomon Grazel. There is The Hebrewisms of West Africa by Joseph Williams. There is Black Jews in Africa and the Americas by Tudor Parfit. A History of the Marranos by Cecil Roth. All of these can be found on Amazon. And in these books, you can find a great amount of information on this topic that we're discussing. There is one other book that has a great deal of history on this subject too. It's called The Lost Tribes, a Myth, Suggestions Toward Rewriting Hebrew History. It's written by Professor Alan Godbey. He was a scholar in the field of the Old Testament, Hebrew history, archaeology, and Semitics. He was a professor at Duke University from 1926 to 1932. He did an extensive work on Israel, and he has gone through the history and shown evidence of the understanding of the identity of Israel. This book is on Amazon as well, but it seems there is only one copy and it is selling for $9,500. Yeah, the truth is just expensive. No book should ever be sold for that much, but whatever. I have found a PDF copy of the book, which I'll place on my website for any others who would like to do the research yourself. I am also placing a list of these other books on my website as well. The link is in the description box. Like I said, this is not about making bland general statements, but clearly giving out the truth so that it's understood for those who desire to live in the real world away from the lies of Satan. So what we will do is discuss more of what happened to the Hebrews after Rome destroyed the temple in 70 AD. Now, in part 4, I went into this history extensively, and I showed that in order to escape the persecution from Rome, the Jews fled south in Arabia, down to Yemen, eventually west into Africa. But we stopped at that point after the beginning of the spread of Islam. So before we cover more information about the Jews who fled into Africa, let's go backwards just a little bit. In Solomon Grazel's book, The History of the Jews, he documents that before Yahusha came to Israel, in the year 63 BC, Pompey, the Roman general, he conquered the land of Israel, which they refer to as Palestine. This is what we know as the Siege of Jerusalem. This is when Jerusalem became under Roman captivity. When he took over the land and put it under Roman control, he carried off a large number of Jew war captives whom he sold later as slaves. Later, these Jews or their children were freed and remained in Rome. And subsequently, any time there were any rebellion against Rome by the Jews in Jerusalem, the captives of war were enslaved, then brought to Rome and later freed. And this increased the Roman population of Jews. It is estimated that by the time of the First Jewish War in 66 to 71 AD, that's the time when Rome destroyed the first temple. I spoke about this event in part 4. It is estimated that there were about 50,000 Jews in the city of Rome. And we know this to be true if we just go back to the book of Acts chapter 28. And it came to pass after 3 days that Paul called the leader of the Jews together. So when they had come together, he said to them, "Men and brethren, though I have done nothing against our people or the customs of our fathers, yet I was delivered as a prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans, who, when they had examined me, wanted to let me go, because there was no cause for putting me to death. But when the Jews spoke against it, I was compelled to appeal to Caesar. Not that I had anything of which to accuse my nation. For this reason, therefore, I have called for you, to see you and speak with you, because for the hope of Israel I am bound with this chain." Then they said to him, "We neither received letters from Judea concerning you, nor have any of the brethren who came reported or spoke in any evil of you. But we desire to hear from you what you think. For concerning this sect, we know that it's spoken against everywhere." So when they had appointed him a day, many came to him at his lodging, to whom he explained and solemnly testified the kingdom of Elohim, persuading them concerning Yahusha from both the law of Moses and the prophets, from morning till evening. And some were persuaded by the things which were spoken, and some disbelieved. So when they did not agree among themselves, they departed after Paul had said one word. The Holy Spirit spoke rightly through Isaiah the prophet to our fathers, saying, "Go to this people and say, hearing you will hear and shall not understand, and seeing you will see and not perceive. For the hearts of this people have grown dull. Their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them. Therefore, let it be known to you that the salvation of Elohim has been sent to the Gentiles, and they will hear it." And when he had said these words, the Jews departed and had a great dispute among themselves. Then Paul dwelt 2 years in his own rented house and received all who came to him, preaching the kingdom of Elohim and teaching the things which concerned the Adon Yahusha the Messiah with all confidence, no one forbidding him. That's Acts chapter 28, verses 17 through 31. So this is a part of history you need to understand. There were very clearly Jews in Rome and all around Asia Minor. Paul was preaching to them. Peter and the other disciples also witnessed to them. But according to Acts chapter 28, some were persuaded by Paul and others disbelieved. Rome, as we already know during this time, was already pagan. That was their foundation. But paganism is usually a tolerant religion. You see, these people believed in the existence of more than one God. So the pagans very easily granted others the right to worship a god or gods other than their own. Rome ratified and increased privileges for the Jews in Rome. They excused the Jews from the worship of the goddess Roma, and were excused from the worship of Caesar and Augustus, who were considered gods by their people. The conquered Egyptians, they didn't get this privilege, but they were required to worship the same as everyone else. But the Jews were not. They were only expected to pray for the emperors. In the city of Rome itself, there were also several districts inhabited largely by Jews. Each of these neighborhoods had its own synagogue. They were able to practice their law and their way of life set by Yah in Rome. They were not led by Yah's power any longer, but they were a people with their own way and their own customs. A set-apart people that had their own set-apart way of life. So what then later happened, the spread of the way started being pushed in the Roman territories. Rome labeled this way as Christianity. The first followers of the way were Jews and those who sympathized with the Jews. But the Jews who did not attach to the message of the Messiah sent, they looked at this new faith as being a new sect, and that it was being spread as a competitor of their influence. But the rest is history after that. We know the belief in Messiah started to spread in this area amongst Rome, first to the Jews and then to the Gentiles. By the early 4th century, Christianity became a permitted religion like the religion of the Jews was. And this took so much influence from the pagan ways that Constantine made Christianity the favored religion, and it was paganism that was tolerated. It was a switch. And then the attitude towards the Jews then changed. The faith was hijacked from this point. There was a complete hijacking of leadership of the faith, and pagans started mingling their belief in with the truth of Yah, and in order to do this, they needed and wanted to remove the influence of the Jews. The Council of the Churchmen, which met at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, met to discuss the faith, and amongst other agendas, they sought to separate the Jews from the Christians. They forbade the Christians to eat unleavened bread on Passover, or to even celebrate this holiday at the same time as the Jews. They prohibited Christians from visiting synagogues and listening to any Jews preaching or teaching. They urged the Christians to not observe the day of rest on the day the Jews observed, and instituted Sunday as the only Christian Sabbath. The bishops grew in influence and began to take away from the Jews some of the political privileges they once long enjoyed. Many of the Christian leadership of Rome urged the emperor to deal harshly with the Jews. They desired that the influence of the Jews just disappeared. They made the claim that the Jews had always misunderstood the scriptures. They pointed to the loss of their nation of Israel as a sign that Yah had rejected and abandoned them. And now these Romans now feel that they are the holders of the covenant. And sadly to say, this is the doctrine much of the church today is still influenced by, which is why the prophecies that Yah has made about Israel coming back to their land are all but ignored. The Roman church hijacked the faith and removed the influence the Jews ever had to it. And so now, in order to understand Yah, you never needed to understand the Jews or Israel and their covenant with Yah. People feel that you only need to understand the God of Israel through the doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church. And that's why they want to consider themselves as the original church, because they removed any influence the Jews ever had over it. And instead of assimilating and letting the faith be led by those who actually understood Yah, they tailored the faith to how they saw God and how they desired to mingle their other gods in with him. And so history continued. Okay, so as the Roman Empire of the West became less prosperous, as conditions grew more unsettled because of their constant wars, as cities declined, the Jews went from trading to farming. This is what the Jews did. Throughout their spread through the different nations they're scattering, you will find that what contributed to the survival was their hustle. They knew how to hustle. They knew how to do trade and to do business. They also knew how to farm and raise crops. This was their way, and as you go throughout the history, you will find that wherever they went, they set up and established many strong different trade posts. But again, as the Roman Empire faded and these Jews were being suppressed by the church, they then migrated west through Italy, France, on to Spain, and then Portugal. And this is more understanding of how they scattered throughout Europe. There is much more understanding that needs to come from this, but I do not want to overcomplicate this and rush through it. Right now, through history, not through opinions or just random thoughts, we see what happened with the sect of the Hebrews after Yahusha was crucified and then was raised up from the dead. The Jews that were not attaching to the way, they did not just vanish from history. There are many parts of their influence in history, and some were taken by Rome. And then through the centuries, they migrated into more of Western Europe and they traveled south into Arabia and West Africa. This has nothing to do with their skin color. It was just a nation of people that even though they came upon massive oppression, they still continued to be a people. They migrated and moved away from oppression and kept their ways and much of their culture. But no matter what they did, they continuously met with persecution and oppression. And it's only because it was prophesied to be this way. Notwithstanding, the children rebelled against me. They did not walk in my statutes and were not careful to observe my judgments, which, if a man does, he shall live by them. But they profaned my Sabbaths. Then I said, I will pour out my fury on them and fulfill my anger against them in the wilderness. Nevertheless, I withdrew my hand and acted for my name's sake, that it should not be profaned in the sight of the Gentiles, in whose sight I had brought them out. Also, I raised my hand in an oath to those in the wilderness, that I would scatter them among the Gentiles and disperse them throughout the countries, because they had not executed my judgments, but had despised my statutes, profaned my Sabbaths, and their eyes were fixed on their fathers' idols. That's Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 21 through 24. As I live, says Yahuwah Elohim, surely with a mighty hand, with an outstretched arm, and with fury poured out, I will rule over you. I will bring you out from the peoples and gather you out of the countries where you are scattered, with a mighty hand, with an outstretched arm, and with fury poured out. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the peoples, and there I will plead my case with you face to face, just as I pleaded my case with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt. So I will plead my case with you, says Yahuwah Elohim. I will make you pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. I will purge the rebels from among you, and those who transgress against me. I will bring them out of the country where they dwell, but they shall not enter the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am Yahuwah. That's Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 33 through 38. And finally, I will accept you as a sweet aroma when I bring you out from the peoples and gather you out of the countries where you have been scattered. And I will be hallowed in you before the Gentiles. Then you shall know that I am Yahuwah when I bring you into the land of Israel, into the country for which I raise my hand in an oath to give to your fathers. And there you shall remember your ways and all your doings with which you were defiled. And you shall loathe yourselves in your own sight because of all the evils that you have committed. Then you shall know that I am Yahuwah when I have dealt with you for my name's sake, not according to your wicked ways, nor according to your corrupt doings, O house of Israel, says Yahuwah Elohim. That's Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 41 through 44. The Bible is extremely powerful and awesome. Satan has been working to keep us deceived and not understand Yah. He creates religious doctrine that limits the power of Yah, while at the same time, he distracts people and keeps many people actually feeling that they are actually serving the God of Israel. With all these Christians all over the world, look at how many times Yah prophesies about what he will do with Israel. If we love the God of Israel, why aren't we excited about the fulfillment of his word and his promise? There are so many that will say that Israel doesn't matter and that the church replaced Israel, etc. But all of this is just evidence of people following and believing in the New Testament while ignoring the Old. But if your faith tells you this is what you're to do, you do not know your faith completely. And it is no one else's fault except your own, because you do not make his word the priority. This subject is so wonderful because we're going to see the power of Yah just as we read about his power in Egypt with Pharaoh. And those of us who believe in him are waiting and believing in his power, and we are ignoring those that say, nothing to see here. We're ignoring that. We don't need celebrities to lead this prophecy. We don't need to stand out in front of basketball stadiums to promote the fulfillment of Yah's prophetic word. What we must do is stand on his promises and wait for his word to be fulfilled, and be one that is a servant to him and helping him however he desires to use us. What this ministry will be doing is going over history to relearn what has not been taught to us so that we can actually live in the truth. All of this is beautiful if you actually live in the truth and forget about the distractions and noise that Satan is creating. the natural and the grafted in branches of Israel will all come back together, and we will all sit in service and worship of Yahusha in the land promised to our forefathers. All who believe in Yahusha are accepted in this kingdom. This is why and how the gospel has been brought to the Gentiles. All of this is wonderful, and it's up to each of us to live through it and be about our Father's business. In this part of the series, we have led up to about the 7th century or so, when the rise and spread of Islam happened. There is much more history to go through as we understand what Spain did in 1492, and I'm not talking about Columbus sailing the ocean blue. We have to learn about these Jews in Spain and Portugal. We have to learn about the Jew kingdom of Ghana. We need to understand more about the transatlantic slave trade, which was again about scattering Israel even more around the world. This is history that has been kept from us, but the information is not lost or hidden. It's right in front of us, and if anyone wants to do their own studying on this subject, I have provided a list of books, including a very hard-to-get book that can assist you in your studies. If you choose to come against history, do so with facts and sources, and then we can have intellectual discussion. What Yah has led me to do is to educate those who desire the truth, and that's what you will receive here, because knowledge is power. There are many subjects that need to be covered in this present day, but if we are going to walk in power, we are not going to start arguing based from the perspective of lies, but we are just going to start teaching and telling the truth, but doing it through Yah's power, not our flesh or our pride. Let us serve Yah in spirit and in truth and do our best to serve His purpose He has for each of us. Don't be distracted by organized religion and their focus on isolating verses. Read the complete Bible for yourself and trust in Yah to fulfill every word as He always has done. As we go through history, you can learn more about Israel and attach yourself to Yah's way, because He desires us all, Jew or Gentile, to be received by Him. So accept His gift of salvation through Yahusha the Messiah. Be forgiven and prepare to be redeemed. Be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please make sure to like it and share it with others. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthunedited.com.
I forbid you to communicate freely with your family and friends on social media, all based on how I think and feel. You see, you are hereby shadow banned and de-amplified, suppressed and censored, all based on the will and the governing authority of the censorship masters. First Amendment rights be damned. You are hereby prohibited from free and fair collaboration, propagation, and dissemination of ideas and thoughts without the expressed approval of the digital overseer. Your channels, shorts, posts, tweets, text, audio, and videos are all under the authority and dominion of the digital overseer. You are hereby monitored and restricted without notification, consultation, or emancipation. It is an indefinite social media incarceration. Your hope is lost. Your freedom deferred. Unless you decide to make a change for freedom.
The history of the Negro has been taught in schools and places of higher learning for centuries. It's a history which includes Africa, slavery, and places to which many of us have been scattered around the world. However, there's a reason why many schools and professors, historians, and researchers have an incomplete understanding of the true history of the Negro. And quite simply, it's because they don't include the laws or decrees issued by the kings who authorized and governed slavery. Many institutions fail to read a single decree by the King of Portugal and Spain, which is why this YouTube video, of all things, is more accurate, more factual than the pseudo-history taught in institutions of higher learning. In this video, we will do something for the first time in modern history in regards to the history of the Negro. We will read the laws and decrees of the kings and queen to see who they said they enslaved and to see what they said to do with them. However, before we review the actual law and decree which started and governed the transatlantic slave trade, let's begin by taking a look at the people targeted and persecuted by the King of Portugal before and during the transatlantic slave trade. Let's begin by taking a look at the Lakesh relief, currently found in the British Museum. You can find the relief by opening your web browser and in your Google search bar, type British Museum Lakesh relief. Enter. And in your results, find the result which contains museum number 124911. That's museum number 124911. Select it. Now navigate to the bottom of the page and select the fourth picture from the left and zoom in to view the ancient tribe of Judah, depicted by the Assyrians who conquered the city of Lakesh. Notice that Judah is depicted with the short, nappy, woolly hair of the Negro. And now be careful of deceivers who would try to hide this truth by deliberately hiding the pictures of the nappy, woolly-headed Judah, and instead show pictures of a people with their head covered. Additionally, a mass grave site was discovered at the Lakesh site, which further validates the nappy, woolly-headed pictures of Judah etched on the walls of the Lakesh relief. As the following reference reads, it reads, Archaeology and Forensic Anthropology, the 701 BC time capsule of Lakesh. Skipping ahead, it reads, no ancient Judean DNA samples have ever been formally published, but we do have a time capsule of data from 701 BCE found at the Judean city of Lakesh in the form of a mass grave that was excavated there. A large mass burial was found dating to the 701 BC Assyrian siege and the conquest of Lakesh, when the Assyrians conquered and brutally murdered the civilian population and exiled the ruling class. The excavator, J.L. Starkley, observed that the skeletons were likely secondary burial, i.e., victims died somewhere else, decomposed, and were reburied here and piled into a disorderly fashion sometime after their death at the hands of the Assyrians during their conquest of Lakesh. Starkley estimated that 1,500 individuals were buried in this mass grave. From these skeletons, 695 skulls were sent to London, England for analysis. The bodies were those of men, women, and children. The Judean civilian population of Lakesh from 701 BCE or 2,710 years ago. And the next reference reads, and it reads, comparisons are made between Lakesh and 21 ancient Egyptian and allied series of skulls by the method of the coefficient of racial likeness, and a classification of the material is presented. The relationships found suggest that the population of the town in 700 BC was entirely or almost entirely of Egyptian origin. Very close connections with some contemporary Egyptian series being found. They show further that the population of Lachish was probably derived principally from Upper Egypt or Southern Egypt. And the next reference reads, the first report on Lachish skulls included a thorough examination of pathology, metrics, artificial deformation, and epigenetic affinity. Utilizing craniometrics, Risden concluded that the group was very similar to dynastic Egyptian material. In fact, he stated that the entire population was of foreign origin, representing descendants of a group derived primarily from Upper Egypt or Southern Egypt. Skipping ahead, he concluded that the group was fairly heterogeneous, having close relationships to North African, Egyptian, and Nubian groups, thus lending support to an Egypto-Nubian presence. And as this article goes on to state that those Egypto-Nubians were not in fact foreigners, but were natives to the area. Now, these Egypto-Nubian sons of Judah were later taken to Spain and Babylon roughly 140 years later. As the following reference reads, the Spanish Jews are the true descendants from the tribe of Judah and the royal house of David, and were settled in Spain from the time of the captivity of the first temple by Nebuchadnezzar. And then once these nappy-headed sons of Judah were taken to Spain and Portugal, they would be later expelled from Spain and Portugal and placed on the west coast of Africa less than 10 years before the start of the transatlantic slave trade in great numbers. As the following reference reads, for he sent new inhabitants who first settled in Guinea, next in Angola, and lastly on the island of St. Thomas, that so they might be better used to the air, that the said king sold all those Jews for slaves that refused to embrace the Roman religion, and caused their children to be baptized, from whom coming thither in great numbers, most of the present inhabitants were descended. These sons of Judah, transported to the west coast of Africa in great numbers, less than 10 years before the start of the transatlantic slave trade, were called by different names. They were called Lancados, Degradados, Tangamos, Portugalese, and they were also called Negroes. And so the sons of King Dawid multiplied and began to spread throughout West Africa. Before the first transatlantic slaves were sent from the west coast of Africa, the sons of King Dawid were well established. That is, until a series of historical events occurred that would change the world as we know it forever.
Madam, it's finished.
Finished? We're just getting started.
Change the world as we know it forever. First, King Manuel changed the trade policy for West Africa. Instead of using Lancados to conduct the trade, he switched to something else. And as a result, he no longer needed the Lancados. In fact, it meant that they were in the way. As the following reference reads, things changed under King Manuel I. At the beginning of his reign, King Manuel did not lease trading rights with Gambia to Portuguese merchants or Lancados, as he did with the rivers of Guinea and Sierra Leone. And so once King Emmanuel changed the way he made his money, he no longer needed the brews. In fact, they were in the way. And so on March 15th, 1518, the year the first slaves were shipped directly from Africa to America, he sent Bernardino Gomez to orchestrate a massive manhunt of Lancados, and he used the newly created law of King Manuel to do it. As the following reference reads, and it reads, King Manuel also had further threats in store for those Lancados, who were already on the coast in large numbers. On the 15th of March, 1518, he commissioned Bernardem Gomez to sail to Guinea to superintend the removal of the Lancados. And the next reference reads, and it reads, the crown at first encouraged the policy of having Lancados in this region to facilitate commerce. Degradados sailed on the voyages of both Vasco da Gama and Pedro Alvarez Cabral. Da Gama took 12 Degradados with him and probably several in Southeast Africa. Once in place, it became clear that the Portuguese crown was unable to control them. In an effort to keep these regions free of non-Portuguese commercial activities, in 1518, the crown reversed the policy of creating Lancados and attempted to round them up. And the following reference reads, and it reads, finally, on March the 15th, 1518, he published a violent charter for which he sent a special ship commanded by Bernardem Gomez to the ports of Guinea with the mission of getting all the Christian Lancados who were there to board. Those who returned to Europe obeying this order would be forgiven as long as they paid the 10 cruzados along with half of their possessions or their farms. Those, however, who refused to embark and to leave the lands of Africa would be handed over to the African kings to be killed. The permit authorized Captain Bernardem Gomez to offer to the indigenous chiefs all the gifts that were necessary to achieve the delivery or the murder of those Lancados. It seems that these violent measures by monarch Venturoso were intended to reach Jews and foreign adventurers who spread freely along the African coast. And so the law that was written just a few years before against the Lancados was now fully enforced, and a worldwide decree was given to all of Portugal's allies in Africa and abroad. And the message was clear. Go, hunt them down, and bring them to me, no matter where they are or how long it's been. Find them. I hereby authorize everyone to hunt them, to take all their possessions. You have my permission. You can keep half of their possessions. Just bring the other half to me, and bring them to me in chains. Bring them to the judges of Guinea as prisoners. And to all those looking for slaves, you can now purchase them from Africa, from the judges of Guinea, for they are now under the judgment of natural death. That was a summary and a paraphrase of a law that's roughly 20 pages long. And with that being said, let's take a closer look at this law issued by King Manuel, who started the transatlantic slave trade and also started it from Africa. This is the law that's never taught in any institutions of learning. A copy of this law can be found in Portugal's National Library. And you can check the description of this video for a link of your very own copy of a non-translated copy. Now, this document is written in ancient Portuguese, which doesn't translate well in Google Translate. So with that being said, we were blessed to have the help of a kind, helpful sister, Emma, professor, perfectionist, along with a professional translation company to review and certify these translations. And with that said, here are a few important excerpts from our translations. First, the law starts by stating the people of whom it is for. Researchers agree this law was written specifically for Lancados. We see this in books from the 1900s. We also note that this law describes the targeted people as being those sent and those who go to Guinea. This lines up with the groups of King Dawood's sons that we reviewed earlier in this video. Some were sent by way of the expulsion edicts, and some fled on their own. Those are the ones who go to Guinea without the king's consent. So hopefully you can see this is just one big story that started in Spain and Portugal and made its way into Africa. As the following reference reads, and it reads, regarding those who are sent to Elmina or those who go to Guinea without the permission from the king, as well as those who do not comply with the rules. Here's a copy of the notes from one of our translators. These points have been validated using additional books and references. And it says, the fifth book is about the punishments or the ordinances for those that, one, went to Guinea with the consent of the king, but didn't keep his rules. Main crimes against the kingdom. They didn't keep the Catholic faith, they didn't pay taxes, or they had multiple wives. Point two, those that were sent to Guinea as punishment for not converting to the Catholic faith, so they couldn't go back by their own will. They were required good behavior, but they would often incur the same crimes. Reparations were paid to the kingdom in silver, gold, merchandise, and labor. The law then goes on to summarize the reason for the law. And it reads, the ordinations and the laws which have thus far been created for things related to our town, Elmina, and for things related to Guinea, are not going well and are not being declared like they should. Therefore, our service needs to step up and help preserve the enforcement of laws, since we are suffering quite a bit. If we take action, such attitude will be useful to all our kingdoms and all the governors and landlords, and also help with the excommunications that have been going on in many kingdoms. However, many laws have not even been created or confirmed yet. This situation is generating a lot of confusion and questions. We need to show that we have the ability to govern properly. The laws that talk about our mind and what we managed to take away from Guinea were idealized by my uncle, King Alfonso, as well as my cousin, King John. Something which they should take a lot of credit for. In the following paragraph, we will write what the law must be. The law basically states that these people could not buy or sell in West Africa without first having written permission from Portugal. And if the Lancados or sons of King Dawood broke this law, the sentence involved turning over the lawbreakers to the Portuguese judges and being sentenced to natural death, aka slavery. As the following reference reads, and it reads, by law, we are ordering all people not to go out of our ships or go to other lands and seas or places that we have conquered, with the objective of waging war or stealing things in our name. Such things should not be done without our permission. The person who does this shall be killed as punishment, which is natural death and slavery. The person who does this can also lose all their belongings and goods. This punishment also goes to all those people who attempt to steal things from our ships, like machinery, mechanical parts, or artillery. Those who are found wandering around other seas shall face the consequences. However, those who were found but have not done anything wrong shall be spared. We need to know all the information we can about the occurrences so we can order the correct punishment to be applied or not. And by this law of ours, we give place and license to all captains, pilots, masters, or landlords of our ships, or our keepers, or any other person of our kingdom, or landlords that those parts for their privilege or by our permission they go. We here state the permission to go to those places and every ship, land, seas that they find. They are allowed to take them and bring all the people they find as prisoners. And as a message to those who defile us will be delivered to our judge of Guinea, which is the west coast of Africa. And by him be judged. Half of what they had will be divided by those who brought them, and the other half will be ours. And last but not least, the same law that authorized the taking of these people also authorized for the first time the taking of slaves from the west coast of Africa. As the following reference reads, and it reads, we are also certified to give permission to the captains of our ships and to order them to go to Elmina or to Sao Tome and to Principe Islands to trade and to negotiate. However, a trip to Sao Tome and Principe Islands should be taken when it is really necessary. There, our ships might have the possibility of buying many slaves to bring to our kingdoms, as well as other things that can be purchased. Ladies and gentlemen, this law written by the King of Portugal is the actual law that started the transatlantic slave trade from Africa to the Americas. It is a law written specifically for Lancados, who are Black Portuguese, who are Spanish Jews, who are Negroes, who are the sons of King Dawid. For the first time in modern history, we have uncovered the greatest secret of the transatlantic slave trade. This is history in the making.
And the book of Hosea is one of the most amazing.
This series about what it means to be Israel is highly important. In order to come back to our Father and be what He desires us to be, it does require some cleansing and removing doctrines of filth from our influence. The videos that I have been doing in regards to being Israel are in regards to this goal of cleansing. We are removing the filth of the other nations and coming back to our Father in more purity and in truth. In the last topic, we dealt with separating from Christianity. And as expected, that was a difficult topic to get through. I mean, I get why. It is a topic that has been heavily influenced by our oppressors, and people feel like rejecting Christianity is rejecting their faith, and that's simply not the case. It is actually the opposite. In dealing with this subject, I realized that there is an overwhelming falsehood that lingers in the faith. Now, the biggest of them all in regards to Christianity is the hijacking of the covenant, making Christians feel that it is them that are the only ones in covenant with our Father, and they replace Israel. That by far is the biggest problem in regards to Christianity, because it literally rejects the actual covenant our Father made in order that people have what they want. Many people will find out that by following that doctrine, they were following a false religion. And the thing is that many people don't even recognize that they actually follow it, because it's not like the Christian church teaches it in this way. You don't hear the Christian church say that you replace Israel. It's just the doctrines and how they teach it, and they never teach about being Israel. But yeah, that's the major problem. Now, besides that major change that Christianity brought in, there is also another major problem because of the lawlessness that has been brought into the faith. People reject the laws and commands because they feel like the new covenant provided this change. You will hear people often say, if we were able to perfectly keep the laws, the statutes, and commands, we wouldn't have need of a savior because we would be able to perfectly do it all ourselves, but we can't. This is why we need a savior. People say things like that all the time, basically saying that we need a savior from having us to keep the Torah. There is basically this belief that our Father's ways are too hard, so basically he changed his covenant to make it easier for us, and that's why we have our Messiah. That's what people really think. That is the major doctrine of Christianity that many follow. Now, there were many people that did try to challenge me last week because they say that they don't follow that lawless doctrine, and they're not a part of the problem of Christianity, and therefore the charge against all of Christianity is not warranted. The funny thing is that people will say that their church doesn't teach that stuff, and then I'll ask them if their church celebrates Christmas and Easter, and then they go silent on me. But like I said earlier, the lawlessness of Christianity, while it is a problem, again, is not the biggest problem. This is not the main reason why I reject Christianity. I spoke on the main reason first. The biggest problem of Christianity is the hijacking of the covenant, which is why Christians feel the end times is all about them and not about our Father's promises to Israel. That is the major problem of Christianity. So while it is good that you don't accept lawlessness, if you don't recognize who our Father is in covenant with, then you still are not in the covenant. In recognizing the covenant, you would want to be Israel and not a Christian. Our Father is in covenant with Israel. He is not in covenant with Christians. And maybe instead of being defensive about that statement, really try to understand what it is I'm explaining here. But like I said, past that issue, one of the biggest problems is people understanding the doctrine of the new covenant and understanding our Messiah. Our ancestors did not understand him when he came to them, and many of us don't understand him today because of the falsehoods that have been taught by Christianity. In being Israel, it is very important that we understand our Messiah and our King. We must understand the new covenant, and before we go any further with understanding what it means to be Israel, it is important that we cover the new covenant and our belief in Messiah, Yahusha. So we're going to understand the covenants. Let's begin. Okay, so like I said, the major doctrine spread in this world basically supports that the reason for our Messiah is that we could not keep the Torah and the commands, and so our Father made a new covenant that was easier for us to keep. Let me tell you that if this is what you have ever been taught or that's what you believe, please disregard this as a lie from the pit of hell. It is a lie. I need to say something that I thought might have been clear, but maybe it's not. I want you to understand this because, unfortunately, you might not have ever been warned of this before. Please know, there is an influence in this world that is desperately against you keeping the commands and the Torah. Satan is the one that will talk to you and discourage you from keeping the commands and from keeping the Torah. He is the one that will tell you things like, Father's ways are just too hard to keep, so he had to change it for us. I mean, if you really listen to those kind of words, they sound exactly like the serpent in the garden. That mindset is from Satan, and you should never, ever look at our Father's Torah in this way. This is how you should look at the Torah. An example you should follow is from King David. King David, he truly had a heart for Yah. As 1 Samuel chapter 13 verse 14 says about David, it says, he was a man after Yah's own heart. And I've said this before, it is my sincere personal desire to be known like that by Yahuwah. For him to feel this way about me is what my heart desires. I mean, imagine Yah feeling that you are a man or a woman after his own heart. So as I read about David, David was not a lawless man. So when people say that no one could keep the Torah, that's just not true. David loved Yah and loved Yah's Torah. Do you know what the longest chapter in the scriptures is? The longest chapter in the scriptures is Psalms chapter 119 with 176 verses. In this chapter, David praises the Torah continuously. In this is a plea to walk in his ways and his laws, to live in righteousness and keep his statutes. Let me give you some examples. Blessed are the undefiled in the way. who walk in the law of Yahuwah. Blessed are those who keep his testimonies, who seek him with the whole heart. They also do no iniquity. They walk in his ways. You have commanded us to keep your precepts diligently. Oh, that my ways were directed to keep your statutes. Then I would not be ashamed. When I look into all your commandments, I will praise you with uprightness of heart. When I learn your righteous judgments, I will keep your statutes. Oh, do not forsake me utterly. That's Psalm chapter 119, verses 1 through 8. Here's another one. Deal bountifully with your servant, that I may live and keep your word. Open my eyes, that I may see wondrous things from your Torah. I am a stranger in the earth. Do not hide your commandments from me. My soul breaks with longing for your judgments at all times. You rebuke the proud, the cursed, who stray from your commandments. Remove me from reproach and contempt, for I have kept your testimonies. Princes also sit and speak against me, but your servant meditates on your statutes. Your testimonies also are my delight and my counselors. That's verses 17 through 24. Here's more. Let your mercies come also to me, O Yahuwah, your salvation according to your word. So shall I have an answer for him who reproaches me, for I trust in your word. And take not the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, for I have hoped in your ordinances. So shall I keep your Torah continually, forever and ever. And I walk at liberty, for I seek your precepts. I will speak of your testimonies also before kings, and will not be ashamed. And I will delight myself in your commandments, which I love. My hands also I will lift up to your commandments, which I love. And I will meditate on your statutes. Psalm chapter 119, verses 41 through 48. More. You have dealt well with your servant, O Yahuwah, according to your word. Teach me good judgment and knowledge, for I believe your commandments. Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your word. You are good and do good. Teach me your statutes. The proud have forged a lie against me, but I will keep your precepts with my whole heart. Their heart is as fat as grease, but I delight in your Torah. It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I may learn your statutes. The Torah of your mouth is better to me than thousands of coins of gold and silver. Psalms 119, 65 through 72. And listen, I could go on and on with this in this chapter here. This is how the whole chapter reads. The longest chapter in your Bible is a proclamation to the love of the Torah, a desire to follow all of Yah's commandments and statutes, to keep his Torah, and not only keep it, but delight in it. Read this on your own. But I want you to really think about this. How is it that a man that was the king of Israel, who was described as a man after Yah's own heart, a man whom our Messiah descends from, why is it that he loves the Torah and delights in it, but some of you believe that the Torah is something that is bondage and something that should not be kept? For any of you that have been against me for talking about keeping the laws of the commands, how can any of you read Psalms chapter 119 and declare it to Yah and believe you are not being a hypocrite? Maybe you're not reading it. If you feel that Israel was not able to keep the Torah and therefore you must not follow it, it is because you have been falsely taught this and you have not truly learned this from a true biblical perspective. Why is the longest chapter in the Bible about a Torah that you all feel should not be followed or kept? Question of the day.
If you're looking to get a credit card to help see you earn points to travel this summer, I would think about two things. First, what's the welcome
or kept? Question of the day. So, my point is, please do not keep any doctrine that tells you there is a problem with this Torah, because it's just not true. There is no problem with this Torah. There's a problem with us and our hearts, and that's why we were chastised and punished. For those of us who have learned our lesson, we must come back to him and serve him as David did. David, he wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, and he paid for them. But he still was loved by Yah, and if we held him as our example, which then, check this, reflects back to our Messiah as son of David, we would know how we are to be. And so get this, to use Yahusha as an excuse for lawlessness is completely and utterly wrong, and it's not tolerated amongst Israel. That is a mindset of Gentiles who claim to know him but do not want to submit to him. If you know you're Israel, there is no tolerance for that foolishness and that lawlessness. Get it out of here. So the next question is, how does this fit with the new covenant? Because in Christianity, you were probably taught something different. So how does this all fit in now? So let's get into it. In order to understand the new covenant, let's go to what was actually prophesied. I've read this in multiple videos, I know, but it's an important foundation. Behold, the days are coming, says Yahuwah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, says Yahuwah. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahuwah. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. No more shall every man teach his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know Yahuwah, for they all shall know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, says Yahuwah. For I will forgive their iniquity, and their sin I will remember no more. That's Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 31 through 34. And this is what is prophesied. This is the new covenant. And before we go any deeper, let me first deal with this point. In this verse, when it says, I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, the actual word used here is the Hebrew word chadash. In Hebrew, this word means to be new, renew, repair. In better translations, this verse actually reads, Behold, the days come, says Yahuwah, that I will cut a renewed covenant with the house of Yasharel and with the house of Yahudah. You see, when you actually understand the word that was actually used and what it actually means, it brings over a whole new meaning. When you understand that the covenant was renewed and it wasn't just new, it changes everything. You see, when something is new, it sounds like it's different than it was before. But renew, it's something completely different. We renew our leases, contracts, we do that all the time. And sometimes it has different terms. A new lease or a new contract, that could be something completely different. And that is precisely what we have been led to feel. But it's not new, it is renewed. And so as I communicate this, I will no longer say new covenant because it brings confusion. It is a renewed covenant. And with that understanding, we must understand what is different from the first covenant than with this renewed covenant. So we first must look at the first covenant that he made with Israel if we're going to understand the renewed one. So let's take it back a step. Let's learn about the covenant that he made with Israel when he took them out of Egypt. In the 3rd month, after the children of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on the same day they came to the wilderness of Sinai, for they had departed from Rephidim, had come to the wilderness of Sinai, and camped in the wilderness. So Israel camped there before the mountain, and Moses went up to Elohim, and Yahuwah called to him from the mountain, saying, Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel. So Moses came and called for the elders of the people, and laid before them all the words which Yahuwah commanded him. Then all the people answered together and said, All that Yahuwah has spoken, we will do. So Moses brought back the words of the people to Yahuwah. And Yahuwah said to Moses, Behold, I come to you in the thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and believe you forever. So Moses told the words of the people to Yahuwah. Then Yahuwah said to Moses, Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and let them be ready for the 3rd day. For on the 3rd day, Yahuwah will come down upon Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. You shall set bounds for the people all around, saying, Take heed to yourselves that you do not go up to the mountain or touch its base. Whoever touches the mountain shall surely be put to death. Not a hand shall touch him, but he shall surely be stoned or shot with an arrow. Whether man or beast, he shall not live. When the trumpet sounds long, they shall come near the mountain. So Moses went down from the mountain to the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said to the people, Be ready for the third day. Do not come near your wives. Then it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunderings and lightnings, and a thick cloud on the mountain. And the sound of the trumpet was very loud, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. And Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet with Elohim, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was completely in smoke, because Yahweh descended upon it in fire. Its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. And when the blast of the trumpet sounded long, it became louder and louder. Moses spoke, and Elohim answered by voice. Then Yahweh came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mountain. And Yahweh called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. And Yahweh said to Moses, Go down and warn the people, lest they break through to gaze at Yahweh, and many of them perish. And let the priests who come near Yahweh consecrate themselves, lest Yahweh break out against them. But Moses said to Yahweh, The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you warned us, saying, Set bounds around the mountain and consecrate it. Then Yahweh said to him, Away, get down, and then come up, you and Aaron with you. But do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to Yahweh, lest he break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and spoke to them. This is found in Exodus chapter 19, verses 1 through 25. So he told Moses to gather the people, and he was now making a covenant with them, that if they followed him, they would be blessed. So with that understanding, let's see what happened next. And Elohim spoke all these words, saying, I am Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of Yahweh your Elohim in vain, for Yahweh will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahweh your Elohim. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the seventh day and hallowed it. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Now all the people witnessed the thunderings, the lightning flashes, the sound of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled and stood afar off. Then they said to Moses, You speak with us, and we will hear. But let not Elohim speak with us, lest we die. And Moses said to the people, Do not fear, for Elohim has come to test you, that his fear may be before you, so that you may not sin. So the people stood afar off, but Moses drew near the thick darkness where Elohim was. Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 21. Hope you're following. What we just read there is what we know as the Ten Commandments. Let's keep going. Now he said to Moses, Come up to Yahweh, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship from afar. And Moses alone shall come near Yahweh, but they shall not come near, nor shall the people go up with him. So Moses came and told the people all the words of Yahweh and all the judgments. And all the people answered with one voice and said, All the words which Yahweh has said, we will do. And Moses wrote all the words of Yahweh. And he rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young men of the children of Israel, who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen to Yahuwah. And Moses took half the blood and put it in basins, and half the blood he sprinkled on the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read in the hearing of the people. And they said, "All that Yahuwah has said we will do, and be obedient." And Moses took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, "This is the blood of the new covenant which Yahuwah has made with you according to all these words." Then Moses went up, also Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. And they saw the Elohim of Israel. And there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of sapphire stone. And it was like the very heavens in its clarity. But on the nobles of the children of Israel he did not lay his hand. So they saw Elohim, and they ate and drank. Then Yahuwah said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and be there, and I will give you tablets of stone and the law and commandments which I have written, that you may teach them." So Moses arose with his assistant Joshua, and Moses went up to the mountain of Elohim. And he said to the elders, "Wait here for us until we come back to you. Indeed, Aaron and Hur are with you. If any man has difficulty, let him go to them." Then Moses went up into the mountain, and a cloud covered the mountain. Now the glory of Yahuwah rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the 7th day he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. The sight of the glory of Yahuwah was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. So Moses went into the midst of the cloud and went up into the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. This is Exodus chapter 24, verses 9 through 18. And let's just stop right there. This right here is the first covenant that Yahuwah made with Israel. This is what he commanded of them, and to consecrate it, Moses took the blood of the oxen, sprinkled it on them, and said, "This is the blood of the covenant." I want you to remember this. This is how he sealed the covenant. Now, this is really important. I don't want you to miss this. In this first covenant, how did Yahuwah give them this covenant after he told them? Yes, he wrote them on tablets of stone, and this is how he gave them the covenant. Now, shortly after, Israel broke this covenant immediately and made a golden calf, and there was a problem, so much so that Moses broke the tablets. At that time, 3,000 people died that day. But Yahuwah, it was important, so he remade the tablets and renewed the covenant. Let's read. And Yahuwah said to Moses, "Cut 2 tablets of stone like the first ones, and I will write on these tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. So be ready in the morning, and come up in the morning to Mount Sinai, and present yourself to me there on the top of the mountain. And no man shall come up with you, and let no man be seen throughout all the mountain. Let neither flocks nor herds feed before the mountain." So he cut 2 tablets of stone like the first ones. Then Moses rose early in the morning and went up Mount Sinai, as Yahuwah had commanded him. And he took in his hand the 2 tablets of stone. Now Yahuwah descended in the cloud and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah passed before him and proclaimed, "Yahuwah, Yahuwah Elohim, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abounding in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, by no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and the children's children to the 3rd and the 4th generation." So Moses made haste and bowed his head toward the earth and worshipped. Then he said, "If now I have found grace in your sight, O Adonai, let my Adonai, I pray, go among us, even though we are a stiff-necked people, and pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us as your inheritance." And he said, "Behold, I make a covenant. Before all your people I will do marvels such as have not been done in all the earth, nor in any nation. And all the people among whom you are shall see the work of Yahuwah, for it is an awesome thing that I will do with you. Observe what I command you this day. Behold, I am driving out from before you the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Take heed to yourself, lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land where you are going, lest it be a snare in your midst. But you shall destroy their altars, break their sacred pillars, and cut down their wooden images. For you shall worship no other God. For Yahuwah, whose name is jealous, is a jealous El. lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they play the harlot with their gods, and make sacrifice to their gods. And one of them invites you, and you eat of his sacrifice, and you take of his daughters for your sons. And his daughters play the harlot with their gods, and make your sons play the harlot with their gods. You shall make no molded gods for yourselves. The feast of unleavened bread you shall keep. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, as I commanded you, in the appointed time of the month of Abib. For in the month of Abib you came out from Egypt. All that open the womb are mine, and every male firstborn among your livestock, whether ox or sheep. But the firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. And if you will not redeem him, then you shall break his neck. All the firstborn of your sons you shall redeem, and none shall appear before me empty-handed. 6 days you shall work, but on the 7th day you shall rest. In plowing time and in harvest you shall rest. And you shall observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. 3 times in the year all your men shall appear before Yahuwah, Yahuwah Elohai of Israel. For I will cast out the nations before you, and enlarge your borders. Neither will any man covet your land, when you go up to appear before Yahuwah your Elohim 3 times in the year. You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leaven, nor shall the sacrifice of the feast of the Passover be left until morning. The first of the first fruits of your land you shall bring to the house of Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. Then Yahuwah said to Moses, write these words, for according to the tenor of these words, I have made a covenant with you and with Israel. So he was there with Yahuwah 40 days and 40 nights. He neither ate bread nor drank water. And he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. Now it was so, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and the 2 tablets of the testimony were in Moses' hand when he came down from the mountain, that Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone while he talked with him. So when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come near him. And Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned to him, and Moses talked with them. Afterward, all the children of Israel came near, and he gave them as commandments all that Yahuwah had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. And when Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. But whenever Moses went in before Yahuwah to speak with him, he would take the veil off until he came out. And he would come out and speak to the children of Israel, whatever he had been commanded. And whenever the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, that the skin of Moses' face shone, then Moses would put the veil on his face again until he went in to speak with him. That was Exodus chapter 34, verses 1 through 35. And what I'm reading here is just how the covenant was established. After this, they built the tabernacle and the sanctuary and the Ark of the Covenant, which is where they placed the 2 stone tablets. They did all of that according to Yahuwah's design and standards, and all of that was necessary for the priestly service of the Levites, including the altar for the burnt offerings. It says, according to all that Yahuwah had commanded Moses, so the children of Israel did all the work. Then Moses looked over all the work, and indeed they had done it, as Yahuwah had commanded, just so they had done it. And Moses blessed them. Exodus chapter 39, verses 42 through 43. More. Then the cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, and the glory of Yahuwah filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter the tabernacle of meeting, because the cloud rested above it. And the glory of Yahuwah filled the tabernacle. Whenever the cloud was taken up from above the tabernacle, the children of Israel will go onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not journey to the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of Yahuwah was above the tabernacle by day, and fire was over it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. That's Exodus chapter 40, verses 34 through 38. And get this is why we celebrate Sukkot. We celebrate when Yahuwah tabernacled and dwelt amongst us. He dwelt amongst this people. Hallelujah. This is very important. Now, as I go over this covenant, the last thing I want to cover is the offerings, specifically the sin offering and the trespass offering. And that's in the book of Leviticus. He has different requirements depending on who sinned, depending on if it was the priest who sinned, the whole congregation of Israel, the ruler of the people, just the common people. he had different requirements. We will read the sin offering for the common people because that's who we are. It says, if any of the common people sins unintentionally by doing something against any of the commandments of Yahweh in anything which ought not to be done, and is guilty, or if his sin which he has committed comes to his knowledge, then he shall bring as his offering a kid of the goats, a female without blemish, for his sin which he has committed. And he shall lay his hand on the head of the sin offering, and kill the sin offering at the place of the burnt offering. Then the priest shall take some of its blood with his finger, put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour all the remaining blood at the base of the altar. He shall remove all its fat, as fat is removed from the sacrifice of the peace offering, and the priest shall burn it on the altar for a sweet aroma to Yahweh. So the priest shall make atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. If he brings a lamb as his sin offering, he shall bring a female without blemish. Then he shall lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and kill it as a sin offering at the place where they killed the burnt offering. The priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour all the remaining blood at the base of the altar. He shall remove all of its fat, as the fat of the lamb is removed from the sacrifice of the peace offering. Then the priest shall burn it on the altar, according to the offerings made by fire to Yahweh. So the priest shall make atonement for his sin that he has committed, and it shall be forgiven him. That's Leviticus chapter 4, verses 27 through 35. Next, we'll read about the trespass offering. If a person sins in hearing the utterance of an oath and is a witness, whether he has seen or known of the matter, if he does not tell it, he bears guilt. Or if a person touches any unclean thing, whether it is the carcass of an unclean beast, or the carcass of unclean livestock, or the carcass of unclean creeping things, and he is unaware of it, he also shall be unclean and guilty. Or if he touches human uncleanness, whatever uncleanness with which a man may be defiled, and he is unaware of it, when he realizes it, then he shall be guilty. Or if a person swears, speaking thoughtlessly with his lips to do evil or to do good, whatever it is that a man may pronounce by an oath, and he is unaware of it, when he realizes it, that he shall be guilty in all of these matters. And it shall be, when he is guilty in any of these matters, that he shall confess that he has sinned in that thing, and he shall bring his trespass offering to Yahweh for his sin which he has committed, a female from the flock, a lamb, or a kid of the goats, as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him concerning his sin. If he is not able to bring a lamb, then he shall bring to Yahweh for his trespass which he has committed 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. And he shall bring them to the priest, who shall offer that which is for the sin offering first, and wring off its head from its neck, but shall not divide it completely. Then he shall sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering on the side of the altar, and the rest of the blood shall be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. And he shall offer the second as a burnt offering according to the prescribed manner. So the priest shall make atonement on his behalf for his sin which he has committed, and it shall be forgiven him. But if he is not able to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, then he who sinned shall bring for his offering 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a sin offering. He shall put no oil on it, nor shall he put frankincense on it, for it is a sin offering. Then he shall bring it to the priest, and the priest shall take his handful of it as a memorial portion, and burn it on the altar according to the offerings made by fire to Yahweh. It is a sin offering. The priest shall make atonement for him for his sin that he has committed in any of these matters, and it shall be forgiven him. The rest shall be the priest as a grain offering. Leviticus chapter 5, verses 1 through 13. And after this was all understood, the priestly service of the Levites began. Now we're almost done here. I just want to cover the Levites. It came to pass on the 8th day that Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. And he said to Aaron, "Take for yourself a young bull as a sin offering and a ram as a burnt offering without blemish, and offer them before Yahweh. And to the children of Israel you shall speak, saying, Take a kid of the goats as a sin offering, and a calf and a lamb, both of the first year without blemish, as a burnt offering. also a bull and a ram as peace offerings to sacrifice before Yahweh, and a grain offering mixed with oil. For today Yahweh will appear to you. So they brought what Moses commanded before the tabernacle of meeting. And all the congregation drew near and stood before Yahweh. Then Moses said, "This is the thing which Yahweh commanded you to do, and the glory of Yahweh will appear to you." And Moses said to Aaron, "Go to the altar, offer your sin offering and your burnt offering, and make atonement for yourself and for the people. Offer the offering of the people and make atonement for them, as Yahweh commanded." Aaron therefore went to the altar and killed the calf of the sin offering, which was for himself. Then the sons of Aaron brought the blood to him, and he dipped his finger in the blood, put it on the horns of the altar, and poured the blood at the base of the altar. But the fat, the kidneys, and the fatty lobe from the liver of the sin offering he burned on the altar, as Yahweh had commanded Moses. The flesh and the hide he burned with fire outside the camp. And he killed the burnt offering, and Aaron's sons presented to him the blood, which he sprinkled all around on the altar. Then they presented the burnt offering to him with its pieces and head, and he burned them on the altar. And he washed the entrails and the legs and burned them with the burnt offering on the altar. Then he brought the people's offering and took the goat, which was the sin offering for the people, and killed it and offered it for sin, like the first one. And he brought the burnt offering and offered it according to the prescribed manner. Then he brought the grain offering, took a handful of it, and burnt it on the altar, beside the burnt sacrifice of the morning. He also killed the bull and the ram as sacrifices of peace offerings, which were for the people. And Aaron's sons presented to him the blood, which he sprinkled all around on the altar, and the fat from the bull and the ram, the fatty tail, what covers the entrails and the kidneys, and the fatty lobe attached to the liver, and they put the fat on the breast. Then he burned the fat on the altar, but the breast and the right thigh Aaron waved as a wave offering before Yahweh, as Moses had commanded. Then Aaron lifted his hand toward the people, blessed them, and came down from offering the sin offering, the burnt offering, and peace offerings. And Moses and Aaron went into the tabernacle of meeting and came out and blessed the people. Then the glory of Yahweh appeared to all the people, and fire came out from before Yahweh and consumed the burnt offering and the fat on the altar. And when all the people saw it, they shouted and fell on their faces. Leviticus chapter 9, verses 1 through 24. Last one. Then Yahweh spoke to Aaron, saying, "Do not drink wine or intoxicating drink, you, nor your sons with you, when you go into the tabernacle of meeting, lest you die. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, that you may distinguish between holy and unholy, and between unclean and clean, and that you may teach the children of Israel all the statutes which Yahweh had spoken to them by the hand of Moses." That's Leviticus chapter 10, verses 8 through 11. Okay, and this was the first covenant that Israel lived through and how it was established. This was the culture of Israel. The covenant consisted of commandments that he gave to them, which he wrote on stone. It also consisted of building of a tabernacle that he was able to dwell amongst them. Also, there was a priestly service through the Levites in which if they sinned unintentionally, there was a way to atone for it. And this is the first covenant that our Father Yahweh gave our forefathers. The covenant made with our forefathers in the day that Yahweh took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt. The covenant which they broke. This was the first covenant. And you see, this was made to be very thorough because it needed to be understood that if you don't understand the first covenant, you cannot understand the covenant that was renewed. And this is the real problem in Christianity. If you read all of this in the scriptures, now maybe it can make more sense to you, now that you can visualize it. This was the first covenant, and understanding it is crucial if you're going to understand the renewed covenant our Father made. So now that this is understood, we will move on to the renewed covenant and what exactly is made different. As you understand this more, you will find that there is a reason why this first covenant was not taught to you in these Christian churches. For all of you in Christianity, I want you to consider how long you might have been going to church and you have never heard your pastor break down the first covenant. Why do you think that is? But we're moving on. You are Israel, and it's important that you understand this first covenant. But listen, it's even more important to know that we are not under this covenant. And so it's even more important to understand the renewed covenant that we are in today. And in the next part, when we go into the renewed covenant, what was shared here, it will make a lot more sense. I pray this blesses you with more understanding and makes you feel more connected in your understanding of our Father. Please go back and read Exodus and Leviticus now and understand it better now that it was visualized for you. We will now move on to the renewed covenant in the next video. Until then, always remember, being Israel means being a chosen, set-apart people, obedient to Yahweh, keeping his laws, statutes, and commandments as he has always desired his children to do. If you are Israel, you are one who does the will of our Father. Walk in obedience and serve him with your whole heart and be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please don't forget to like this and share this video with others. If you have not done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthunedited.com. As always, I really would like to thank all those who support this.
We gotta praise God. Let's count our blessings. I teach you a lesson, and yeah, we gonna praise God. We gotta praise God. Let's count our blessings. I teach you a lesson, and yeah, we gonna praise God. We gotta praise God. Let's count our blessings. I teach you a lesson, and yeah, we gonna praise God.